What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. And if you're watching me on YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I think we did a great job recording the last episode, and I'm really excited to stretch my creative muscles and finally be on YouTube. So I started working on my first vlog for you guys. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so because I have every intention of making this like the most epic place for us to be. All right. So without further ado, let's dive into the brand new episode of the Girl Be Bold podcast, which is so interesting because I will tell you, yesterday I sat down to record and it would not come through. I was trying to record a different episode and I was trying and it was pushing and it was pushing and it just would not come through. And finally, I ended up recording an episode because it was like, well, it has to go live tomorrow, right? I recorded an episode and I was it just did not feel right. It didn't feel like the magic that I felt with every single other episode. I felt like it was just a delivery thing. And so usually what that means is that there was something, kind of beneath the surface that wanted to come through. So I was like, it's okay. We're going to have this come out and be published just a little bit later. That's all right. My girls got me. They get it. So I sat in meditation this morning and it was like, I just got really curious. And I said, what's the thing? Like, what needs to come through? What's missing? What am I not connecting with? And of course, the message, boom, dropped in. And it was like, this is the message that you need to talk about today, which happens to be probably one of the most important and the most solid pillars in my work that has been consistently part of my work since I started in the online space. So the other day, I was actually at a party here in Tulum and I was meeting a lot of new people, right? Which I'm not really used to, which you'd think, Chiara travels the world, is always meeting new people. Yes, I am, but not within like this kind of group setting where you're just kind of jumping from one person to another. And it's like, well, who are you? And who are you? And you know, you don't realize how comfortable you get navigating and gallivanting around the internet, when you just assume that everyone knows your story because that's how close I feel to my community. And I feel really just safe. Like, you guys know this story, it feels like that. So when I'm like meeting someone new and God forbid they're like very, you guys hear the magic here in Tulum? God forbid they're like very curious and they're asking really deep, like penetrative questions, I felt like I don't know, it was amazing. So I was sharing my story and, you'd be surprised how deep you could go with someone that can ask you really great questions, right? And I was talking to this guy and I was sharing a little bit about my journey and he said to me, he goes, wow, you must really enjoy being on your own. You spend a lot of time with yourself, right? Because I was sharing my story around, New York and then moving back to LA and then leaving LA and all of the things, right? In the last year. And obviously there's a lot of nomads here in Tulum. So, they get that part, right? But just sharing kind of the elements. And I said, yeah, I said to him, the relationship that I have with myself is the most important relationship like ever for me. It's the most important relationship that I have, period, right? And what's interesting is when I said that, I felt a little bit of a zing in my body. And I don't know what it was. It was like this charge around, is this okay to say? Right? Is this selfish of me to say? Should I be putting my son first? Should I be saying something really spiritual and enlightened because I'm in this like spiritual community here? Like, is it okay for me to actually share that the relationship that I have with myself is the most important thing? It is my priority in my life. Like, is that okay? So that was really interesting. And when I sat back with it and I really like kind of analyzed, how powerful this concept of the relationship that I have with myself is, I think back to even when I started in the online space back in like 2009, right, as a blogger. I started as a dating and relationship blogger, and it was literally called Chiara Says, the reality slap you've been craving. It was very dramatic. The little like remnants of, the bold self was definitely, and they're a little bit, less mature and developed, but there I was with my brutal honesty, always there, radical ownership. Because regardless of the advice that I was giving in relationships, and dating, I was always coming back to the relationship with the self. It was like at the core, it was always about that. Even when I was talking about topics like infidelity, where you would think I would be focusing very much on the relationship dynamic or like the partner, it was always coming back to the self. So I know that it is a big part of my life. I realize that this is a big pillar of my work. So that's what I want to talk about today. And, I want to also share with you kind of the perspectives um that I've taken. I have my little notes here. I'm not used to doing podcast episodes without at least an outline. So to keep me focused and keep us on time, because I could riff, especially on topics like this, I could riff forever on. But what I want to cover today is like the ways that we dishonor the relationship with ourselves every single day, and maybe why we do it. I'm going to riff on, maybe what is it, 5 ways that we do it. And then I want to talk about how to actually honor it and how to actually strengthen that relationship. So I'm going to give you some actionable items that you could put into play, because I will tell you that if you are looking to call in more money, you are looking to call in love, you are looking to call clients, whatever it is, like, expand your business, improve your relationships, whatever it is, it all starts with you and the relationship that you have with yourself. And, sometimes we put a lot of the power outside of ourselves, right? Which is not a principle. Like, one of my founding principles is that it all starts with us. Like, every relationship you call in, the amount of money, the bank, your bank account is a reflection. I'm going to say this with love. Your bank account is a reflection of the relationship that you have with yourself. Whether or not you want to admit it, right? We're going to have a brutally honest conversation here, definitely in the first part of today's episode. So, buckle up. I've got some magic for you. So, the first way that we dishonor the relationship that we have with ourselves is that we get into our head and we become slaves to the what if scenarios. So, I have a friend of mine who cannot make a decision for the life of her, right? She is always constantly in her head. Well, what if I do this? If I do this, and she like maps out this entire like potential outcome basically that will unravel from her making one single decision. And what ends up happening is a self-abandonment, right? I've talked about this as well, where there is no right or wrong choice in most situations, right? Like ethical, morality things aside, like super intense, like, whether or not to harm someone, like all of that aside. When you are deciding, like, should I go here? Should I go there? There is no right or wrong answer. There is just a decision. And the, story that unfolds on the other side of that. And that's really hard for people sometimes to navigate. But what ends up happening is that when we leave our body and we move our way up into our head and we're in there and we're playing with all of these different scenarios, what ends up happening is a form of self-abandonment, right? Because what was an initial yes or pull or activation or something that really excited us now kind of gets cut up into this jigsaw puzzle that we try to put back together in our head around, what the right decision is. And we lose our power to all of these possible, outcomes, right? We lose our power to it because all of a sudden we become slave to the possibility of this completely exploding in front of us, right? And going down or being the wrong path and ruining everything we've ever built or whatever like crazy, like end of the world scenario we come up with. And we abandon. And so all those little jigsaw pieces, right, that were once part of this like grand whole of like your vision, your desires, the things that you want to bring into the world, basically break up in your head. And you're like, well, if I go here, then I go, then this happens, right? And then if I go there, but then if, am I willing to risk that? And it's not to say that pros and cons lists aren't helpful sometimes, right? And, kind of like looking at a scenario sometimes is good. Absolutely, right? But like much like we talked about in the last episode, like our body knows, right? There is a yes and there is a no in our body. And every time that we kind of get lost into these spirals, right? We abandon ourselves and we abandon our truth, right? And every time we do that, by the way, the more often we do that, the weaker the relationship with ourself gets, because it's a constant. Well, I can't trust myself, right? Because I can't trust myself to make a decision because I don't have all of this information that I perceive to be required to make a decision. So that is the first way that we completely dishonor the relationship that we have with ourselves, because it's a form of self-abandonment. In fact, all of this is a form of self-abandonment. All right. The second way that we dishonor our relationship with ourselves is that we will rationalize our way out of scary growth-oriented things. And I work with very high level female entrepreneurs, women who are out there like taking leaps, jump like big quantum jumps. They're having ripples, they're having impact in the world. They're starting revolutions like, one of the requirements, I think, to lead at that level is an incredible level of intelligence, right? And that intelligence can absolutely be our gift because look at what we are able to create and we are able to, like, ripple out impact into the world, into the collective. It's fucking amazing. But that intelligence can also be, a curse, right? It can also be damaging to us. It can also be destructive. I can't think of the exact word I want to say, a hindrance, whatever. It can absolutely stand in the way of magic. Why? Because you are so smart that you will rationalize your way out of taking the action that is required, right? Something that might be scary, but ultimately might lead to your growth and evolution, which is what we are actually all here for, right? But it becomes so easy to actually just give in to why not now? Why maybe you should wait, maybe you should do this and this and this and this first, and then maybe et cetera, et cetera. Right now is not the right time. I don't have the space for this. I don't have the capacity. I've got to do all X, Y, Z, whatever. Or maybe I'm not fit for that, whatever. We will rationalize it. And the fact is that you are so smart that it will make sense in your head. And you will hear that rationalizing, that excuse, that reasoning, basically, you'll hear it in your head and you'll think, that makes sense. Okay, I'm not going to take action. Okay, this is not the right way to go. So when we do that, right, it's a complete dishonor of the relationship that we have with ourselves because it's almost like we are using a gift to trick ourselves into safety and staying small. It is a gift to be as smart and as self-aware and intelligent and brilliant as you are. It is a gift to have the fire to even have a vision as big as you have, right? But you are dishonoring the relationship that you have with yourself the moment that you use it to trick yourself and stay small, right? Because it's like a trickster, right? It's not, it's you're dishonoring that relationship, you're dishonoring the gift. So I feel like that one might have stung a little bit, but that's okay. I love you. I feel like we all needed to hear it. I myself included. Hi, raise my hand. All right. Number three, and how we dishonor the relationship that we have with ourselves is that we break promises to others. Okay. Now, I am a big believer that being in integrity and honoring your truth is the number one priority. I do not believe in bending over backwards over fire. There are times, of course, right? I might do something that I don't want to do in service to, or a promise that I made or commitment or somebody that I care about, right? However, that is because it's in alignment with who I know myself to be. I know myself to be a good friend, and so I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and drive you to the airport even though I don't want to, right? This is where you draw the line, right? Because I think a lot of people will say, oh, well, if the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important, then why even do anything for anyone unless it's like, yeah, 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 unless you really want to. No, that's not what this is, right? Who I know myself to be is really important. My identity, my sense of self is part of the relationship that I have with myself. However, breaking promises to others, right? When it's a reflection of the undeveloped self, maybe insecurities that you might have, like you might break a commitment to doing something that you maybe, let's say you agree to go support someone, at an event or whatever, and then all your little insecurities come up. And, "Ooh, you're not good enough. Ooh, you don't deserve to be there," whatever it is. And you come up with some bullshit excuse not to attend and not to support that person, right? That is a reflection of your undeveloped self. That is a reflection of the parts of you that are navigating feelings of inadequacy and feelings of insecurities, right? And so when you do that, you dishonor your highest self and you are basically staying loyal to the smaller version of yourself. And every time that we are put in this position, and we break that relationship, we reaffirm that we are the smaller self. We reaffirm that for whatever reason, we are not in a place where we deserve to be at a table, or even deserve the kind of friendship or relationships or whatever that we have towards others. So this is a huge another form of self-abandonment, very specifically self-abandoning the higher, more evolved self. Okay. This is an important one. Number four, we're doing great on time. Number four, breaking promises with ourselves. Okay. The way that we I think this probably is the number one way that we dishonor the relationship that we have with ourselves is that we break the commitments that we make to ourselves, the promises that we make to ourselves. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to sign up for this program and I'm going to attend classes every single day live, right? I am going to make space for something that I value. I am going to educate myself. I'm going to expand myself, whatever. All of these promises that we make. I'm going to get healthier. I'm going to get more divinely connected. I'm going to start meditating every single day. All of these little things, right? These are commitments made from you to your higher self, from your higher self to yourself. It is a connection of strength of your desires, of what it is that you want to call into your life, how you want your life to evolve. This relationship is incredibly important because you are basically sitting down at the table, shaking hands with that vision and saying, yeah, okay, I got you. And then every time you break those commitments, right, because they become so easy, especially if you are so good at rationalizing it. I'm not going to go to the gym today because, I stayed up late last night. Whatever comes through. I'm on my cycle, whatever it is, right? I'm going to get off the treadmill early because XYZ, whatever these little micro, agreements that you make with yourself, like, or micro justifications that you make with yourself, right? Little things. Oh, I'm going to skip eating healthy this time because I had a really long day. All of these things break the commitment that you have made to improving and evolving and achieving and actualizing your higher self and the next level of your life. And this is incredibly important because you are doing this very likely every single day. So I want you to ask yourself, much like we talked about in the last video, in the last episode, where we talked about like all the ways that you're not honoring your yeses or nos, right, in your body. It's like, how many times a day are you giving yourself these micro justifications to stay small, right, or to not honor these promises that you have made with yourself? Now, on the flip side, every time you do, actually follow through, studies have shown how powerful of an impact that has on the relationship with yourself, your motivation, right? And you're just self-efficacy, right? Your self-confidence, because ultimately that's how confidence is built through action. But every time that you break those little promises with yourself, you are breaking that relationship, you're breaking that commitment. All right. Number 5, right? 2, 4, 5. Number 5, um, and this is, as we know, my favorite topic. One of my favorite topics is lowering your standards and letting people cross those boundaries. Every time you do that, okay, every single time you do that, this is very much connected to the last episode. So if this is like bringing zing, 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 I 100% invite you to go listen if you haven't heard the episode. But every single time that you lower your standards, right? You have a standard for, let's say, partnership, or you have a standard for, let's say, a client, right? But somebody comes in and they don't meet those standards, but they're willing to pay you money, and you're in this lack. You're in this, like, I need to make money. Maybe you've had a dry spell. Maybe you haven't had anybody coming into your field for a while, whatever that is. And you're like, you know what? Fine, I'm going to take it. Every single time you do that, you break and you weaken the relationship that you have with yourself, because the version of you that are setting those standards, right, is the one that says, this is what you're worthy of. This is what, you should be available for, because this is what's available for you, because this is what you deserve, right? And every single time that you say, okay, I'll take a little less, every single time you do that, right, you weaken that relationship with yourself that was built when you set those standards in the first place. And it's the same with boundaries. When you put out some boundaries and you say, you know what, I value my time, for example, let's say with clients, and you say, I'm not going to check my messages or my emails in the weekend, right? Because why? Because I value my time with my family, my private time, my personal time, my creative time, whatever it is that you spend your weekends doing. And then you let somebody come in. What does that mean, right? If you do then, respond to a message, and not from a place of spaciousness, but more from a place of like, well, I don't want them to think that, their investment was wasted. Every time you do that, you are saying, oh, my time doesn't matter. My creativity doesn't matter. Oh, my family doesn't matter as much as I said that it mattered. And when we talk about the things that matter to us, what we value, right? that is actually us strengthening the relationship with ourselves because we are defined by the things that we value, right? We all have different core values. So if you say to yourself, a core value of mine is family and connection and creativity, these are things that are important to me. When you let something through that boundary, you are basically saying, oh, maybe I don't value those things, which is basically saying, maybe this relationship that I have with myself, with this connection or this sense of self, isn't really as strong as I thought it would be. All right. Okay, we're doing great. Let's keep moving. Now, those were the ways that we daily dishonor our relationship with ourselves. But since we are on a growth journey and we, myself included, me on video right now is pointing at myself included, right, is a daily, it's a daily commitment. It's a daily devotion. The relationship that I have with myself is daily devotion. It is something that I prioritize every single day. I have to because I'm human and I will, rubber band back to old patterns and behaviors. I will, lower my standards. I will people please. I will break promises to myself. It's so easy. I can just disappear into social media and scroll instead of, actually doing the things that I want to do. Like, for example, creating a really great content for us, it's so easy to do that. So building and strengthening that relationship that we have with ourselves has to become a daily practice. So regardless of where you are in your journey, put down the beating stick after having a little bit of zings and zaps from the things that we just covered. And let's drop into how to actually strengthen the relationship that we have with ourselves. All right. Now, the first one, I'm going to repeat what I said in the last episode, learning to trust and honor the yeses and nos in your body and having the self-awareness to know where those yeses and nos are coming from, right? If a yes is coming from a place of fear, lack, I need to fit in, whatever, that's not a true yes. Are talking about the true, like, soul yes to things. Like, yes, I want to do this thing. Yes, I want to be with this person. Yes, like, this is something that I want to invest my time and energy in. Like, yes, 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 I want to try this thing. Yes, this excites me. No, this is not a match to who I want to become. No, this is not aligned with my vision, the vision that I have for my life. No, this feels out of integrity. No, this does not meet the standards and the boundaries that I have set for myself and the life that I want to create. The yeses and the nos. The most important thing, the most important way that you get to operate through life in integrity and in alignment with who you are and what you're doing. All right. Number one. Number two, bet on yourself and take the big leaps. All right. Like, bet on yourself and take the big leaps. You know, Many people hear my story around how I started my business. I was a struggling single mom, could not pay her $1,100 rent. And I made a huge decision, a massive commitment to an investment of $40,000 to pay a sales coach because in my mind, if I learned to sell, then I'd never go hungry again. And this is a story for another time. But it was an important decision and it was a massive leap, a decision that absolutely was not reflected in the reality of my life at the time. I was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment with uneven floors. I could barely make ends meet. I was barely able to pay for groceries. Like, this was a very real time of my life. And the opportunity to take to work with a coach for an entire year for $40,000 when I couldn't even pay my $1,100 a month rent was a massive shift. It was basically saying, are you ready to absolutely change the trajectory of your life, right? And be willing to leave this behind and be a version of yourself that you've never been because you don't know yourself on that side. So when I signed the contract, and I often talk about this moment, I was terrified because after I signed the contract, I fell into fetal position for like 2 days, barely getting up to go to the bathroom. I cried. I'm like, what have I done? It was a massive decision. But as I was signing the contract, it was so important because I was signing it with the energy of success is inevitable. I will make success inevitable. I will proceed as if success were inevitable. Basically, I am moving and I am not available for this to not work out. So, in that moment, in one of the scariest leaps that I've ever taken in my life, I had to bet on me. I had to go all in on me in a time where my reality reflected back. I had no reason to go all in on me because look at where I had gotten my life. I couldn't fucking even pay my bills, right? And so it was a moment that the current version of myself was definitely not the kind of version that would, be building a multi-six and then seven-figure business, right? It was the version who couldn't pay for a $300 grocery bill, right? And so this was like the reality of my life at the time. And so when I signed that contract, I went all in on me. So betting on yourself, taking these big leaps, every time you stand in your own corner, you strengthen the relationship that you have with yourself because you're basically saying, I've got my back. No matter what, I've got my back. I'm going to show up. You are the only common denominator in the rest of your life. You are the only thing that is guaranteed to be there from the beginning to the end. It is your biggest investment. It is the most important relationship. That relationship, especially in taking courageous, risky leaps, right, that are going to lead you to the things that you want and the life that you want to experience and desire, right? This could also happen, by the way, in seeking out love, right? You might be scared from having navigated really traumatic or traumatic heartbreaks, right? And being able to say yes to love and being able to say, I'm going to bet on me. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to take this massive risk because I get to, right? I deserve to fall in love. I deserve to have this experience is one of the most powerful acts that you can take. Number 3, follow through your commitments to others because of who you know yourself to be. Every single time that you step into integrity around who you are, right? Around who you know yourself to be, whether or not the thing, the commitment, whatever lights you up in the moment, right? Coming back home to who you know yourself to be is going to strengthen that relationship, even if the commitments and the decisions and the promises might not be like a hell yes in the moment, right? This really strengthens that relationship. So building that and anchoring into that and reflecting, allowing the life that you are living to reflect it back, right? The sense of self that you are proud of, right? Someone that you are proud to be. I am proud to be the good friend that gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and takes my friend to the airport because it's who I am. I know myself to be that. Every single time you do these things, regardless of what it feels like on the other side, is going to strengthen that relationship. All right. Number 4, follow the commitments and honor the commitments and promises that you make to yourself. I have to tell you, I will do an entire episode on discipline because it was such a my month of discipline in February was such a magical experience because of everything that I got to create on the other side of it, right? Because I realized and I knew that I had goals and I had dreams and I had visions and that it was, that I got to do them and it was going to be hard work, right? But honoring that promise every single time and coming out with a finished product strengthened that relationship every single time because why? It honored the relationship that I have with my future self and the vision for my life, right? Because these promises, these commitments that we make in these periods of our lives, whether it's I want to get healthier, I want to make more money, whatever it is, right? Anytime we do that, we are doing that in alignment, right, with our future self, with the vision of our life that we desire. So being able to do that and being able to make it through those micro promises every single day. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to go to the gym, whether I like it or not. Every single time, it feels so good to do that. And I think we all know this, by the way, when you do something you don't want to do, but you've committed to doing. And then at the end of it, on the other side of it, it's like, yeah, that sucked. But also, like, I am so proud of myself for having done that. Those moments that you were looking in the mirror and you're saying, I am so proud of myself for having done that. Like, that is a strengthening of the relationship that you have with yourself. And you are able to do that, every single day. And I love doing this, by the way, and even like micro little moments and scenarios where I'll say, like, let's say I'm on a hike, right? And I'm getting to that edge where I'm like, I'm tired. I'm feeling it. I feel like it's about time. And I'll see like a tree up ahead and I'll be like, I'm gonna make it to that tree. And that little like challenge, and then like, basically crawling all the way up because I'm so tired, right? But like making it and like touching the tree is so fulfilling and so rewarding because it's like, aha, I did it. Anytime that you can set that up into your life, even small things, if you have a big project to take over, like for example, you have to clean out your closet, make an agreement with yourself and say, I'm gonna do the top 4 shelves and then I'll go and have lunch, right? Go and do those top 4 shelves because once you do them, you're gonna be like, that felt really good. Okay, after lunch, I'm gonna do 3 more. And this is how you do it, little bit by little bit. Every single time you do that, you're honoring that self. You're saying, okay, I know that when I want something, I can give it to myself. And there's nothing stronger than that moment. I'm tell you, all right. Number 5, and this is obviously one of the most important ones, is to hold your standards and your boundaries, even if it doesn't seem like anything is on the horizon. Okay. If you are looking to date somebody new, I'm like, if you are looking to date somebody new and you have these new standards for your life, and then you realize, oh my God, it's like a freaking desert out there. There's no one on the dating apps. There's, no one, no prospects. My roster is down, down, down. The important moment is the moment that you decide to hold that standard, despite the fact that it's desert like, as opposed to lowering the bar just so that you can have somebody come through. That moment is the moment that that bond is strengthened and that standard is solidified, and that standard, by the way, then clears the frequency so you become a stronger match. We'll do a whole episode on magnetism and being a match for the things that we want, but holding that standard is going to solidify that relationship with the self and clear the frequency so that there's no disruption and it's understood as it goes out into the world. And it's the same with boundaries, right? The more you're able to hold those boundaries, the more you're able to affirm that. And the more you're able to affirm that, like, no, right, I'm not going to check my emails this weekend because creativity and family time and all of this stuff is the things that I really value, is the more that that sense of self strengthens because you are affirming all of the values that really matter to you. And the more you're repeating that over and over and over again, the stronger that relationship gets. And that's the message for the entire episode, by the way, is the more you're consistent with all of these things, the stronger the relationship with yourself becomes. And when you have the strong relationship with yourself, you are able to call in money, love, clients, flow, creativity, all of the things that you want because you are anchored in your sense of self. You're prioritizing your sense of self, and everything knows exactly what you are a match to. So I hope today's episode was exactly what you needed to hear. If you're watching this on video, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all in the next episode of the show.